Contracts, contracts, contracts. Let's talk about them. If you shoot photography or you are a filmmaker in any aspect of the term, your contract will determine whether or not you are successful or not successful as a photographer. It's a very blanketed statement. I'm going to explain it, and after I explain it, I promise you it's going to make sense. I promise you it will. The reason that I say your contract will eventually determine your worth as a photographer or a filmmaker is because if you ever have to defend your contract in court and you lose, you have to understand within the photography community how that will affect your reputation. Let me explain that part. Let's say you have a clause in your contract that says under no circumstance will you receive raw images. I do not give raw images. They are not an accurate representation of my work. You may or may not even have software capable of processing or editing said raw photos. So I don't give those out. Let's say you have a bride who is incredibly pissed because it took too long for her to get her pictures back. Okay. So now she says, I want a partial refund, and since I don't like the edits, I want the raws so I can just edit them myself. You don't like being bitched at, you already give her, or you go ahead and give her that. In the United States, if you willingly void a part of your contract, you void all of your contract. Now, when I say in the United States, this is true in the United States, in Canada, and in Australia. There may be other places throughout the world this is also applicable. I can tell you that in the United States, Canada, and Australia, in these three countries, this is absolutely something that many people overlook, and it ends up biting them in the ass in the long run. If you void a part of it, you void the whole thing. Now, at the same time, that goes both ways. If you have a client that breaches your contract, a clause in your contract, the entire contract is breached. You may have a final addendum in your contract that says if any of these clauses are violated, the entire contract is void. Now, obviously, if you say that and you've already been paid for the event, less the retainer, you will have to return, whatever monies you were paid. So if you were given $4,000 for a photo and video package, bride and groom, mother of bride, they bitch at you for 3 weeks. Eventually, dude, fuck this. I ain't doing this shit. I'm tired of dealing with a stupid bitch. So you give her the money back. At that point, you have fulfilled all of the obligations of your contract. Now, it sucks because that's, $4,000 or $5,000 that you're not getting. You're only making off with the retainer. But at the same time, you have absolved yourself of having to deal with them anymore. Big downside to that is that bride and groom are left without wedding photos. Now, you also, some people will have this in a primary contract. Some people will have this as an addendum to a primary. But you have to understand that if you do something like this, most people will go out of their way to ruin your name in photography. Now, depending on whether or not what they say is true or not, that is absolutely grounds for a civil case against that client. Now, most situations are resolved, especially on Facebook. They can be resolved by reaching out to tech support or customer support on Facebook about bad reviews. If you can prove that, they haven't been litigated or that it's not true. A lot of times Meta is very good about siding with the photographer or the filmmaker. Now, historically, it wasn't always that way. It seems like there's been some kind of paradigm shift in the fucking universe where now they actually care about the photographers. But, you know, such is life. Anyways, your contract should cover everything from, you know, your expectations out of everyone present at the wedding, everyone present, not just the bridal party or the family, everybody present. And it should cover everything from being badgered or harassed by clients or any person present at the wedding. Sexual harassment. I know, you know, plenty of, you know, my female photographer friends that have had drunken groomsmen try to approach them and things like that. They always have, you know, airtight clauses in their contracts covering sexual harassment, and even more unfortunately, sexual assault or physical touch, physical violence, things of that sort. You absolutely need to have that in your contract, especially if you are a lady out there, because some people, when they get drunk, they get very handsy. Obviously, I'm not justifying that. As a matter of fact, I'm condemning that shit to the highest level, but sadly, it's a reality. You need to be covered. If for some reason you're touched or you're sexually harassed, you need to tell the bride, you need to tell the groom, listen, this was in my contract, this has been violated, toodaloo, and you need to leave. Now, if they do try to sue you for that, you do have a pretty solid case to stand on, but I would honestly hope that it never gets to that point. I don't think anybody deserves that, to be honest. But yeah, if you're on the fence about it, and I want to get into photography, or I want to get into wedding photography, first off, you need to second shoot a wedding about 10 or 15 times before you even remotely consider trying to lead shoot. You're setting yourself up for failure. If you, oh my God, I got a camera, I'm gonna shoot a wedding, you are about to be in for the rudest fucking awakening in the history of fucking rude awakenings. But some lessons people got to find out on their own. You need to second shoot and get a lot of wedding experience under your belt before you try to take one on yourself. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if you're shooting a friend, you're shooting a family member. You need to be experienced going into it. Because if not, shit can end up real bad for you. I've seen families become estranged over wedding photos. I've seen friendships just absolutely ravaged, for a lack of better terms, over wedding photos. Do not do it unless you're extremely confident in yourself. You have that experience, that prior experience going into it. But if you're on the fence about it, and you're kind of up in the air, like, do I want to start diving into weddings? Reach out to a local seasoned photographer. Many of them are willing to, you know, take somebody on. Some are, some are not. Me personally, I do not. But I know many that do. And your best bet is just to reach out and say, hey, I've been shooting for, you know, this long. This is the gear I use. This is what I have experience in. Could I, you know, potentially shadow you for a wedding? Some will say yeah, because to be honest, it's free help. They may have you doing detail shots and then rounding family members up for family shots. But yeah, absolutely. There are many photographers that do it. So definitely reach out. But the biggest thing before going into either second or lead is contract. Now, as a second shooter, you're going to have a contract for the lead shooter to sign. If you're a lead shooter, you need to be prepared to sign the contract that the second shooter has. Now, as a second shooter, you should be prepared to sign the contract that the lead shooter has. This is a part that is very, very, very often overlooked in wedding photography. People say, oh, I've got this person coming in and I've known them for a while. They're going to show up. We're going to start shooting. No, there needs to be a contract between everybody involved in that wedding. Absolutely, hands down. Um, that's something that's overlooked, and it's often problematic, especially if it's your first time shooting with someone and you don't know them really well. Um, you need to have a contract. Let's say a lead. You need to have a clause for your second to see that says, yeah, they can, obviously they're going to retain copyrights to their own images, but they're not allowed to post or communicate or contact the bridal party, bride and groom, anybody else involved. The communication is only between lead and second, second and lead. That's it. That's something also that is often overlooked. But if you guys ever have any questions about contracts, like I said, I've got a dear friend that I come up with things on the photography and the business side of the legal contracts, and he simply says, okay, this would hold up, this would not hold up. It's basically a peer-reviewed contract. I come up with the business side of things, like, hey, for instance, you're going to feed me at a wedding. His line of work is more of, the legal side of things, and mine is more of the culinary side, if you will. But yeah, if you guys ever have questions about contracts, please reach out to me. I do this stuff. I've created a number of contracts that have been peer legally reviewed by a number of attorneys, and sadly, I've had contracts that have had to be defended in court, and I've never had anybody say, I lost this case because of your contract. Consequently, I've had plenty of people say, I didn't have an issue at all in my court case because of your contract. So, you ever have any questions about what clauses you need to have, with the meat and potatoes of the contract, what do you not need in it? Definitely reach out. I'll be more than glad to help you, because I want to see you succeed, but I want to see you be legally covered and protected. That is the most important thing. So, reach out. I'll answer whatever questions you have, and you'll be on your merry way.